Well, hey there team, welcome back to the channel and welcome to my review of Doom 2, the one and only from 1994. If you're not across it, I've been doing these sort of retroactive reviews from decades removed from current year, being 2024. I played a bunch of 2014 titles early in the year. I went and looked at what came out in 1994, and lo and behold, there's Doom 2. And as a bit of a required reading, I reviewed Doom 1, because that came out the year before that. And you can check that review out on the channel, but suffice to say, still holds up incredibly, and I love it to death. And so, Doom 2, this has taken me a little bit longer. In fact, probably about, 6 hours, 6.5 hours, all said. So Doom 1 in its entirety cost me probably 3 hours. There are 4 chapters these days. I only played 3 from the first game. So it's probably safe to say this is a much bigger package. So around about 30 levels, something like that. I think maybe 32. There might be some secret hidden levels, but whatever. 30 levels, we'll call it. And in many ways, it's just more Doom. However, controversial as it might be to put this on the table, I personally enjoyed my time with Doom 1 more. And by the end of this, it kind of became a little bit of a slog and wore me out. And that's just because of some of the design philosophies or lack thereof. So look, bear with me, we'll unpack it, we'll talk about it. How dare he say bad things about Doom 2? Well, this is my experience as playing it. So yeah, straight out of the bat, it's pretty much the same game. The story continues what little there is. Doom 1, you fight back a demon invasion of Mars or Mars's moons, go through portals into hell, and then find a portal back to Earth. Basically, that, from what I understand, that's where Doom 2 picks up, is that you've gone through the portal, you're now on Earth, fighting back the demon attack. So it's not broken up into chapters anymore, it's one long contiguous thing. However, it does have these sort of intermittent walls of text. It probably does have a sub-chapter thing going on, you could say. As we say often, comparison can kind of be the mother of misery. I preferred the way that it was disparate chapters from the first game. This feels like just like a quite large blob. I don't know. This might be more, some sort of psychological theory, but breaking it up into the 3 episodes, I just enjoyed more. One big noticeable thing is that the difficulty is ratcheted up from the beginning, and it ramps all the way through. Where I would say Doom 1, I didn't really have a hard time. In fact, you could count on one hand how many times I died during that playthrough, and a lot of them would have been falling into unfortunate situations. Getting crushed by a roof coming down, or, just sort of unusual scenarios. As far as the straight gameplay, it was fun, it was challenging, but it never really twisted me nips. But that's very different here in Doom. Oh my God. It was tough, and it was a good tough a lot of the time. However, and we might as well jump forward to it because I've organically wound up there again. A lot of the level design gave me the shits in this. There are a few times where I had to look up guides to figure out what I was doing, and I think it could best be broken down to, we had some very enthusiastic developers trying to push what they could do with their build as hard as they possibly could. And in some cases, it sort of manifested as almost like a spin-off sub-episode off the beaten path. Think of Barrels of Fun as a level. It's just barrels everywhere. Because you can do it, they did do it. But any sort of feeling of a contiguous narrative, again, I know it's thin, but it all kind of goes out the window when you load into a mission and it's a gimmick mission. Everyone's going to feel differently about that, but I found it a little bit jarring, and it found more like you were loading up custom WoD map packs of people coming up with clever party trick one-shot levels as opposed to, the actual core campaign. So structurally, I enjoyed Doom 1 better. In fact, the very first episode of Doom, and I know I have a bias towards that because that's the one I really played a lot, but I just felt that was better than anything I've played since. And a lot of it I fell back on because there is a familiarity of the architecture, that it's, these military bases. It kind of makes more sense, at least to the human mind. Again, this is me speculating as to why it resonates more with me. And we got into more demonic level design in the first game, and that's kind of carried over here. The one thing that sort of flies in the face of it is there are some cityscape missions, and to me, they're the worst ones. They drove me nuts. But I don't know if it's necessarily an architectural fault, but it would just be these disparate buildings, and they would have a puzzle to solve So it was less about being an interestingly designed cityscape and more about almost being like a hub area with all these little puzzle rooms that you had to go and solve. So yeah, apart from it being kind of, for lack of a better term, immersion breaking, that's fairly harmless. And in a way, I can kind of feel the developers' enthusiasm to push the system as hard as they could. Where it does actually give me the shits legitimately is there is a lot of stuff in here, and you can feel that it's because they can do it as a developer. But the way that it manifests, from a consumer gamer perspective is as cheap. Like, there are a lot of scenarios where you could fall into a pit of acid or whatever, but you just can't get out. Bad luck. You're dead. To me, that erodes the trust that you have with the player kind of immediately, especially when, every other time leading up to it, there'll be a teleporter or something to get you back out of the acid. There will be a way through. But a lot of just obscure puzzles, motion trip switches, even placement of monsters. They've clearly come up with clever ways to put dudes directly behind a pillar so they don't move, and you'll walk next to the pillar and the guy will be there right on top of you. Like, again, it's not the end of the world, and I'm not really boohoo crying about it, but you can see that it's more, hey, here's a quirk that we figured out we can do in the development process of, placement of monsters, very specific spots. And it comes across as more of a tech demo showing off what you can do with the engine, as opposed to like a pleasant experience from the front end, right? From the gamer perspective that doesn't really care about how clever the way you're triggering different events goes. And so, yeah, I'd find myself looking up some guides trying to figure out what's going on. How do I get through this? Introducing a whole plethora of interesting party tricks from a technical aspect, but that really kind of wore on me by the end of it. Anyway, look, this is not to bash Doom 2, but it is actually kind of a glaring issue. I haven't even touched on, new weapons. The super shotgun is introduced, and arguably that is the iconic weapon from all of Doom ever, and it earns that spot as well. I don't think I used the normal shotgun once in this entire game. You pick them both up, you can press 3 to swap between them. And there'd be an argument for better use of ammunition, but I don't care. So most of the time I was using that shotgun, and it will deal with almost every problem apart from what I would call like super bosses, Cyber Demon and Arachno Dude. But even the smaller spiders, everything, Hell Knights, you can super shotgun them. There are some new monsters introduced. What is it? Like the Mancubus, the Revenant, and they have their own quirks, sort of pseudo heat-seeking missiles. And Mancubus actually is a good counterpoint. The way that he shoots is probably the most difficult to predict in the moment, especially when there's a couple of them in the room. There's the chain gun guys who are infuriating. The thing about the zombie characters is that they can be quite dangerous because they are hit scanned. Shotgun zombies often, I can't speak for everyone else, but if I walk into a room and there's all sorts of monsters, even though they're probably technically lower on the food chain, they'll be one of the first ones I try and get rid of, apart from the chain gunners. Just these dudes being able to laser you with hit scan bullets that you can't physically dodge is infuriating. But even saying that, a lot of the zombies take a back seat to the power creep, right? So we have more of these monsters. The incident of cyber demons and spiders and all that is much higher. So there's a power creep built into the game. And broadly speaking, it's great. It creates for a much better challenge. And I would have died dozens and dozens of times figuring out the levels because I can't remember any of this. Again, I played more Final Doom than actual Doom 2. So my familiarity with any of these levels is nil. But yeah, broadly speaking, to dot point it and not, let this get away from me too much, it's more Doom. It's power crept. The difficulty's ramped, so it is in many ways a great sequel. And I suppose even under that general discipline of adding more, they are doing more with the riddle nature of the puzzling of levels and how to solve them and get through them. But often it's almost a 50-50 split of whether a level is actually kind of good and I enjoy the new twists and the clever aha moments of that was clever what you did, dear developers. But then the other side of it is a lot of it is just throwing stuff against the wall because you can, because you're more focused on what you can do with the engine as opposed to whether it's even going to be fun for the player on the other end. So yeah, I think that's fair. I'm not out with an axe to grind, and I didn't regret my time at all. I loved it. But if I were to hold them up against one another, I think Doom 1 absolutely better, for sure. But who's really comparing them anyway? They come part and parcel, and in many ways, while the Doom 1 experience is tighter, cleaner, shorter, and generally well-rounded, it kind of does serve as a prequel jumping into Doom 2. So they go together very well. Anyway, keep an eye out because I'll chip away at the Doom content over time. I've put it all in a spreadsheet. Though, if you can understand, I'm a little bit burnt out on this. I do like a bit of variety in my diet, so we might pivot to something else. But who knows? We'll see. We'll see where this little retro journey takes me. Anyway, team, might just leave it there for the time being, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.